Okay, so today's focus will be on related trigonomic graphs. So, as we saw the other day, a trig, a trig graph went from uh, this would have been our sine up as far as 1 down to -1 up, and it was in a cycle. Not every today we're going to be looking at what happens if our graph had a bigger amplitude. So what happens if the maximum and the minimum is a relationship between them both? Okay, we're going to look at that today. And what happens if it does a full cycle quicker? Okay, so what happens if the what we'll call the period decreases? So that will be what we're mainly focused on today, is the amplitude, how far it stretches, and the period, how long it is before it repeats. So we will talk about the range a little bit as well, but the two main focuses will be amplitude and the period. Okay, so graphing functions, sine of x is the same as 1 sine 1x, or 0 plus 1 sine 1x. Today we're going to be looking at what happens if we change the 1 in front of the sine, or if we change the 1 in front of the x. They will do two different things, and we will look at that in due course. The first one is if the number in front of the, for example, if we had, for example, 3 sine of x, what that would mean is that the amplitude, or the stretch of the max value, so back to here, this is our red one, the maximum value here would be 3, and the minimum would be -3. So if we were to stretch our 3 sine of x, what that means is that we multiply our sine of x, the output would be multiplied by 3, taking all of our outputs. Then, of course, we're looking at what c is. Not as simple as the amplitude, okay, but it is pretty, we will look at it. 2 pi over c. So yesterday, in the previous video, everything was 2 pi over 1. So we had a period of 2 pi for sine of x. If I had sine of 4x, it would be 2 pi over 4. So what that would mean is that for your graph, as I said, we will be looking at function graphs momentarily, okay, all pre-made. It would go up, down, and instead of where yesterday it would have been 2 pi, it repeats every pi over 2. So it goes up, down, up again. That would be pi, up, down. That would be 3 pi over 2. So it would repeat every 2 pi. So pretty much as c increases, so the higher the c is, the period decreases, gets closer and closer. So you could have something like AC, alternate current. If the current was going up and down, it could be repeating every 20th of a second or every 200th of a second. So then the range will be a minus b. We haven't dealt with a yet. We'll be looking at a tomorrow. In today's lesson, the range will be just minus b plus b. So we would have seen that. Plus the amplitude, minus the amplitude. In today's lesson, we'll get a little bit we will make a bit more progress with it on the next video. So 3 questions, sketch the graph and state each of the following. So 3 cos of theta, where 0, so we would have to sketch our graph between 0 and 4 pi. So we'd start our graph at 0, we could go pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and 4 pi. We know it repeats every 2 pi, so it starts at 0, the maximum value, so it would start at 0, 3, and we should be back to 0, 3 again. We should go down and up by 2 pi, and we go again for 4 pi. I've just drawn this on a internet website called desmos.com, and it's a graphic calculator, and we will be going through it in class, how to use Desmos to see some understanding. So of course you don't need to know how to use Desmos for Leaving Cert, but it is something, it's a handy tool to use, and there is a chance when you're in third level you could be using Desmos. It's quite easy to use, and you can use it to verify answers from any questions you're doing. You could use it a lot more next year in calculus, but we will be introducing it next week. So that was Desmos. Next question was sine of 2x. So sine of 2x, we know the should I say sine of 2x or 2 sine? No. Okay. Sine of 2x, in this case, amplitude is 1, okay, because it's the same as 1 sine 2x, and our period will be pi. So it goes up and down, and it repeats every pi. So I pretty much, because the period is pi, the dimension, the intervals I went across was pi over 4, because we go from the start to the top, back to the midway, to the bottom. So a full cycle will be represented by those 4. If I just went pi over 2 dot, it's just going to be a straight line, isn't it? Okay, so we do need to be doing 1/4 of our period so that we know the exact intervals to be doing. Okay, so you're going to see that a bit more in this one, which was 4 pi, or 4 as a sine or cos. It was cos because it starts at the top. 4 cos 3x. Okay. B equals 4, C equals 3. Okay, so before we look at the question, there's no harm writing in B equals 4, C equals 3. The amplitude is going to be 4. Okay, and the period is 2 pi over 3. So 2 pi over 3, divide that all by 4, is pretty much pi over 6. So we should nearly be going, that should be pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2, and back up to 2 pi over 3. Okay, so, and then it did say to do it between 0 and 2 pi, and as you can see, you've 1, 2, you would have had 3 periods between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at how questions can be asked, and we'll model the process behind them. Okay, you could be, quite kindly, you could have been asked just to find the amplitude and the period. Okay, they could have asked you the range as well, but we're just going to look at the amplitude and the period for each of these 3. So with the practice, AMP equals 3, and then we have period is 2 pi over C, which is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. Next one, amplitude. Just making sure something. Yes, the amplitude here is the absolute value. Okay, so even though, I just want to make sure that I did verify it there, the amplitude is the absolute value. If you were to say the amplitude was -2, you're not getting your marks. Okay, so it's the absolute value of -2, which is 2. And same again, period is 2 pi over 1, which is just 2 pi. Next one we have is 4 pi over 4 sine of 3x. So amplitude is 4, which is your B. B equals 4, C equals 4. Your period is 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. And the last one, before we move on, amplitude is your 1/4, and your period is 2 pi all over 2, which simplifies the pi radians. Okay, so from there, we're going to write down the period and range of the curve. So you might be given a function or part of a function, and you need to be able to be able to work backwards to find the period and the range. So we know the amplitude. Amplitude here is from 0 to 1, okay, and 0 to 1 the other side. So the range will be -1 and 1. Okay, I could say b equals 1. Okay, we will focus on b is just positive for these two questions. We will be showing you b being negative in a later video. Then we have the period. Okay, so the period is 2 pi all over c equals, and we know that the full rotation equals pi. Then we cross multiply, so 2 pi equals c pi, the 2 pi's would cancel, so c would equal 2. Then we're asked hence to write down the function. So what we need is to decide whether it's sine or cos. Because it's the y-intercept is the max value, y-intercept is the max, therefore it's going to be cos. So the final thing we'd have to say is b equals 1, c equals 2, so it's 1 by the cos of 2x, which you can simply say is cos of 2x is perfectly okay. Cos 2x. Okay, that's the first one. Let's look at the second one now. Okay, so we see the amplitude. We can say the midway line, okay, a keyword will be seen later on in our study, is halfway between the max and the min. Okay, and it's from the midway line up and the midway line down would be our amplitude, which would be 2. And then we do the same, so yes, b, which is the same, b equals 2. Working backwards. You do need to learn that formula, a plus b sine cx or a plus b cos cx as well. So we know the period is 2 pi over c, and we let it equal, so we see it gets to 4 pi before it repeats itself. So it goes up, down, up, midway line, back down, back to the midway line. So the period is represented by 4 pi, not 2 pi, which can confuse people. Hopefully we don't make that mistake. While I was talking about that, I made a different one. Okay, so we're back there. So we cross multiply again. We can get rid of the 2 equal the pi's, 4c, and c equals a half. Okay, so its y-intercept is at the midway line. Okay, or the origin, we'll say the midway line. Okay, getting into that terminology. So we know therefore it's going to be a sine, and it can be expressed as 2 by the sine half of x, or x over 2. Okay, we could say y equals just to have it as a function, but what's in the red box will get you full marks. Okay,